Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to this final day of Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Live. I'm delighted that we've had the opportunity to bring the industry together in this first virtual conference. It's been a fascinating 2 days of insights, knowledge sharing, exchange of ideas and innovations that we of course hope will bring the industry, that will help the industry navigate these turbulent times and of course help to adapt to the new reality that we're faced with. It's been great to see and hear so many of you have had the chance to meet through the platform too, to meet new contacts, to build new relationships and find new innovative solutions. In case you missed any of the sessions from day one, are available to view on demand. Yesterday's sessions will be available soon. To access the sessions, look at the schedule tab and click on past. This will show you all of the on-demand sessions. Do also remember the event site will be available for 30 days and the past content for the next 2 weeks. So bringing us on today, we have a fantastic agenda and lineup of speakers for this final day. Sessions include leading the charge for electric revolution with Volkswagen, spotlight on commercial vehicles supply chains with heads of logistics from MAN and Scania, a special finished vehicle logistics chat with Daimler, Volvo and Glovis. We'll also be looking at rethinking supply chain networks with GE and Tata TCS, and more finished vehicle logistics with Volkswagen, Nissan, Inform and Jack Cooper. A look into the world of after sales with Toyota and Volkswagen, and so much more with senior logistics heads from Nissan, Volvo, GM, Honda. And to wrap it all up, one-to-one chat with Bo Anderson, President and CEO of Yazaki Corporations. And of course, all the interactions you can have with our sponsors and e-exhibitors that include our marquee sponsor, Jeffco. There's of course AP Muller-Maersk, Carter Logistics, Siva, CFR Rinkins, CHEP, CMW, Cosmotech, DP World, DSV, E2 Open, Evolution, Fract, Gallagher Global Logistics, Glovis, Inform, Jack Cooper, Kuehne+Nagel, Macroplastics, Proact, Protrans, and Sigfox. Thank you all for being sponsors and exhibiting here. Do take the time to check out their e-booths and see how they can help. So let's kick off the day with a spotlight on India's supply chain. In this first session, we'll share some updates on the state of the Indian automotive industry in the wake of COVID-19, including market and trade analysis and insights on key supply chain trends covering passenger vehicles, construction equipment, and the challenges and opportunities in this dynamic region. To discuss this key region, I'm joined by Kalpesh Pathak, who's Vice President of Supply Chain Management at FCA India Automobiles, Gunjan Malhotra, Vice President and leading purchasing and commercial operations at JCB India, Amlan Bose, COO and Senior Vice President at Smart Links, and of course, former supply chain VP for supply chain at Ford India. And of course, Puneet Gupta, Associate Director for IHS Markit Automotive. Great to see you, everybody, and thank you for joining this session. I know it's an afternoon for you all there, and of course we've heard so much about what's happening in India these days. I hope everything's continuing to be well for you all there. I'd like to first start the session with some insights and some brief overview on what's happening within the India market. So I'd like to invite Puneet just to share some insights. Of course, we've just seen more of your detailed analysis on the session beforehand, but just to kind of give us an overview of what's happening in the market, could you share some insights of the key trends and things that are happening in India at the moment?
Yes, Neemish, thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon to all of you. So first, let me start with few vital statistics for Indian automotive market. So today, if you talk about India is the largest two-wheeler and three-wheeler manufacturer in the world. They are the second largest manufacturer of the buses in the world, third largest in trucks, and fifth largest in cars after US, China, Japan, and Germany. And if you really talk from the Indian economy perspective, the Indian auto industry contributes 49% of the manufacturing GDP and employs around 40 million people. So clearly, auto industry is the backbone, of Indian auto sector. So now coming to what's happening in the automotive industry today. So basically, if we see last 2 decades, so Indian automotive industry had a dream run. So if I talk about cars in year 2000, for example, light vehicles were roughly around 700,000 units. And in 2018, India touched 4 million units. So clearly a CAGR of more than 10%, clearly a double-digit CAGR, which was amazing. But then, in 17, 18, we had a lot of structural reforms like demonetization, like GST. So undoubtedly, from the long-term perspective, these are great initiatives by the government. But in short term, they really derailed the economy. They really derailed the auto industry. So we have been seeing that GDP growth rate have been slipping from 2017 onwards. And auto industry have also been slipping. And even last year, we saw the industry, car or light vehicles, so they went down by double-digit degrowth. So this year, even it has been a disaster because of COVID. So the industry is expected to down by roughly 30%, as you may have seen in my previous presentation in more detail. So now, I think the flywheel of the auto industry had started moving, which is obviously a great news. But nevertheless, we should not get carried away by this short-term growth. So clearly the damage by pandemic was colossal. So it was like huge, right? So, and I think when we are talking about next few months, we are talking about a conflation environment, which means an environment of high inflation and contractual economy. So which is anyway suicidal for any economy or any country. And this is primarily because we had a very long, lockdown in India. So clearly, I think when we see going forward, we really see a kind of a W-shaped, distorted recovery, happening in India, because sustaining the growth, what is happening these days, like in August or what is expected in September or October, it will be clearly key. And in short, to cut short, so I think definitely pandemic has hit the industry very hard. And primarily, specifically from India perspective, we should not take this pandemic as a sprint race. We should take it as a marathon race, which clearly says that this is going to remain for long, and we have to adjust our supply chains, our clients' needs, or our customer needs accordingly. And so, with this, back to you, Neemish. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Puneet. It's of course interesting to hear how the market has been affected so dramatically, right? And of course, that of course causes shock effects across the market, right? So it's clearly India's automotive market has gone through kind of a turbulent couple of years over the last few years, and it's been primarily dominated by a few players in that market as well, right? So and with of course the migrant workforce there, it's hard to keep track of those challenges as well, right? So what's the kind of outlook there in terms of strategies there to kind of help support the industry? There's of course been so a look at incentives around electrification and those kind of things, and adapting supply chains to more regionally focused. How do you see that kind of affecting the market?
Yeah, so I think when we talk about auto industry, so maybe unfortunately this industry has not got helicopter money, from the government. So maybe if you see, the Indian government has been able to address, and put in a lot of money for the lower end pyramid of the people, right? Even in COVID times, we have seen that. So obviously this benefit is missing, and industry has to lift off its own. So though there are talks about that, there may be some GST cuts, which is possible. But nevertheless, I think if we talk about COVID times, so I think electric mobility, like happening in globe, in India also we are seeing that the government is finding it as a great opportunity, to reduce the dependency on fuel, oil or gas, right, which is being imported. Like in India, we import 84% of the oil today, and maybe going forward it is going to be 98% by 2050, and even natural gas is going. So I think government here is trying hard, to really move the entire ecosystem towards electric mobility. So we have seen, last year there was a cut in the GST to 5%. Which was, again, there was a FAME scheme, a next version of FAME scheme. But I think this was more focused toward two-wheeler and three-wheelers rather than four-wheelers. So I think that also shows, that the government will be really focused on two-wheeler, three-wheelers. And we are also seeing now a lot of state governments, for example, Delhi government came up with the electric vehicle policy, and now we are hearing from the Telangana government. So I think state benefits coupled with the central government benefits, really will make electric vehicle a great proposition, because it's all about narrowing the gap between ICE engines and electric vehicles, right? And once this is happening, because if you see today in Delhi, I think this is happening, right? So you can buy a product like Tata Nexon Electric by paying a little bit extra, than the ICE engines. So I think the way is really electric mobility is really the way going forward, and I think both state and central governments have been really pushing hard on it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. That's really interesting insights there. I think we can circle back to some of these topics, with the other members of the panel there as well. And maybe as a little bit of contrast to the passenger and two-wheel and three-wheel market, I'd like to invite Gunjan to give us some insights on the construction equipment, where I think there's been a slightly different kind of market there for you, right, Gunjan?
Absolutely, and I'll start from where the previous speaker left on the pandemic part, Puneet, and the impact of pandemic, was felt globally across the businesses and, in fact, the human lives in multiple ways, which are difficult to model and definitely difficult to assess. The affected regions, if I may talk about, they are indeed the hub of the global supply chains. So, I would say end of quarter 1, maybe calendar year April onwards, all the global manufacturers, then they have started managing the business through various disruptions, have driven their own way of addressing to the business needs. And it had a long-lasting impact on many organizations, in fact, industries, irrespective of their size, segment, or geography. Construction equipment, indeed, is one of them which were hit very hard, because the grinding halt was there in India on few of the aspects. So in the shorter term, the influence lies mainly on the demand compression, supply chain logistics, difficulty in recovering the build plans. But the magnitude of these disruptions were directly proportional to the time required to recover from the industry, and far more significantly impacted were the human lives, for that particular matter. The costs, indeed, will increase temporarily, and they will continue to increase. And I completely agree with Puneet here, that we see an inflationary market originating from higher costs on logistics, higher cost of manpower, higher costs on on the commodity as well. However, every disruption is an opportunity, and definitely it's an opportunity to revamp the business continuity plans, the supply chain processes. However, in India, one of the important aspects with respect to the markets that we have seen is the post quarter 2. In April and May, we have seen a demand compression, and the business started with a very, very cautious, optimism, which was very important aspect. However, in the month of June, July, and August, last 3 months, that we have seen is a significant increase with the government high focus on the infrastructure. Because of which the markets have really come back strong, and they are more stronger running at a rate as compared to 2019. So similar months 2019, I would say the markets are much more stronger. The demand spiral up is happening at a very consistent pace, and I'm sure in next few months it's going to do that. The important part is how do we really respond to these situations in a very structured way. How do we really make the data backed considerations on the supply chain, which really helps us in the value chain to stay afloat and build proactiveness, in the entire value chain to really take the benefit of this growth, and the country excuse me, to the next level. So that's how we really see the market going upwards.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks for those insights on the construction equipment. Of course, there's been a lot of stimulus in terms of infrastructure development. Agriculture is growing quickly there in India. So it's been a somewhat of a boom time for you, before COVID, with all of this investment going into, as I said, infrastructure, et cetera, right? So I guess one side is kind of trying to keep up with that demand, but and that continues, right? Infrastructure development continues. So, when do you see that kind of starting to pick up again? And where are those kind of opportunities to rebuild the growth strategy there?
Absolutely, Nimesh.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, let's take some other perspectives from the passenger vehicle side of things. I think I'd like to get some thoughts from Kalpesh and what's happening there from Fiat India. I know, of course, your plant is based in Pune, but of course you're in a different part of India today. What's the situation for you there, Kalpesh, at the moment?
So let me just begin. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Nimish, that Automotive Logistics has come up with this virtual conference. That itself tells us that pandemic is teaching us a lot of things, and we are changing based on the situation, and that's the mantra which we call in our Hindi language to move forward. So I think it's terrible times at the same time. My previous speaker also spoke that it brings a lot of opportunity. Now, coming to the passenger vehicle, as Puneet also mentioned, that we were already a depressed kind of growth situation pre-pandemic. And let me tell you very candidly that when we started having this news of COVID starting from China somewhere in the end of January, early February, we never thought that it will spread to this magnitude. And really, like we were not, frankly speaking, having the kind of awakening which like today we look back and see where we are and what we could have done. So that's where we started, and really like come March 23rd, and India also declared the lockdown, and like the whole industry has come to the halt. Now in my like entire career of almost 3 decades, I never thought that the wheels of the economy or wheels of the industry can stop like this. I would have never imagined that in my wildest dream. And then taking over from there slowly as we move to like say May, when the government started lifting the lockdown partially, the way demand has spurred, actually if we see last 2 months like July and August has been quite good in terms of industry. And you can say that August was a good month where almost we surpassed the pre-COVID kind of scenario. So the kind of things which has happened in such a short duration at such a fast pace, and that gives me a bigger worry. Now coming back to like the obvious question, like what's going to be the future outlook going from here? Whether it's going to be a V-shaped recovery, W-shaped recovery, we don't know. Correct, and that poses the biggest challenge in front of the supply chain professionals, that how you are going to base your business model. Because otherwise, if you plan for a very like rosy kind of situation, then obviously if something goes contrary to what you have planned, you will have a dip in terms of kind of issues which you will have, higher inventory and all that. Whereas if you plan on the conservative side, probably you will not know if the demand suddenly picks up, how you are going to cope up. And over and above all this, so this is the biggest dilemma we all have in front of us in our respective domains, and it's difficult to predict and come out with any kind of strategy or plan how we need to work. That's first thing. Second most important aspect which I have seen is that, see, the people, like in my 3 decades career, I never thought that I can work from home for 6 months, but it's a reality. Hmm? But see, working from home as well as working from plant, we have a lot of people working from plant, a lot of people working from home also. The biggest challenge is how we are going to keep the morale of the people high. Hmm? Because working from home also adds a lot of trouble. People are unused to it, they have to get acquainted with a lot of new things, new way of working. So I think this is the first and foremost fundamental one, is the demand side. What's going to happen, we don't know, or no one can confidently say. But yes, obviously we'll have to take our calls and decide our firm up our plans. Secondly, how we are going to keep our people motivated. Like I work for our company is located in Pune, and Pune today is one of the hotspot in the entire country. And those who are going to the office, those who are involved with the physical activities, I think how to keep their moral upbeat and keep their health and safety in check and control. So these are the major challenges. The third aspect is like supply chain involves a lot of external stakeholders like transporters, service providers, and how we are going to take care of that, how we can support them so that the whole ecosystem remains like healthy and safe, and make sure that whatever we are planning, they will be with us to support. So these are the main points and dilemmas, Nimis, at this point of time comes to my mind. And we don't have all the answers, but yes, I am a firm believer that adversity definitely brings opportunity. We have brought a lot of new dimensions into our work life. Just to give you a small example, that I never imagined that a guy in my team sitting in Jalandhar in Punjab up north can do the custom clearance activities in Mumbai and Nhava Sheva. So it became a reality. So there are a lot of positives also, and I believe in a positive kind of mindset. So I'm quite upbeat. Yes, there are short term hurdles, but long term, I think definitely this learning is going to take us to the next level.
Yeah, thank you, Kalpesh. I think that's really interesting, and of course, as you say, right, our ability to adapt is phenomenal, and
Yes.
and I guess also the speed of that adaptation as well, right? Because the ability to kind of get your teams, working and communicating together, and of course, managing those supply chains, both in terms of the lockdown and shutdown, and then of course ramping back up again, right? Have your teams felt about these kind of challenges? Have they all been working quite well with you on that, or what kind of challenges have you seen around that?
So, luckily, Nimish, I think, as I said, it's a very pertinent issue. And let me tell you, so far, so good. Whatever challenges were there, like from our company standpoint, I think we are able to meet our customer demands. I would not say 100%, but quite satisfactorily, I would say, quite a significant number. Plus, we have some ongoing projects also. And let me tell you that with the minor delay to the extent the lockdown happened, where nothing moved, so like we are almost there in terms of our targets what we had planned. So I would say luckily my team has been doing a fantastic job, and that really helps us to keep our customers happy, and at the same time also our project timelines on track.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's fantastic, Kalpesh. I think they're very interesting to hear. Of course, you're in another part of India as well, so this you're not in Pune at the moment, so you're in
Yes.
another part of India. So that's of course, yeah, again, another kind of challenge there, not being so close to the plant as well, right? Where
Yes.
you've been going in, as you said, you're 30 decades. The most of that's been spent actually in the plant, right?
Yeah, first time in my entire career I have worked from home for 6 months, which I can't imagine. Correct.
Yeah,
But I'm a
exactly.
firm believer, Nimesh, in technology, and I think technology is if the pandemic had not come, probably certain technology would not have adapted at the pace where we should have been. So that's another positive. So I think this will teach the industry how to work with the technology, and like logistics and supply chain industry in India, the skill level of people, which we have been discussing in our previous conferences also. I think the pandemic has really helped. Let me tell you, my shop floor level person also can able to join and speak to me virtually on Google Hangout or Microsoft Teams, which otherwise, if there was no pandemic, would not have happened. So that's a big positive.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's great to hear. That's great to hear, Kalpesh, and we'll circle back to some of these topics as well. Let's also hear from Amlan there, who of course has moved to of course a different company, but you know, up until recently you were in the thick of it there with Ford, and you know, have been with Ford India and Ford Motor Company for many years. What have you seen during that time, and I guess what's the difference situation now, right? And of course you're in the as they call it, the Detroit of India, there in Chennai, where you have a number of other kind of key OEMs and commercial vehicle equipment manufacturers, trucking companies, and of course tier suppliers. Well, how's the situation there in Chennai at the moment?
Thanks. Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks, Neemish and team, for having me, and thanks to the panelists. Yeah, I think what I have observed, it's today, incidentally, is the 30th day of me moving out of Ford. So I just completed barely a month, which is after spending 2 decades with the organization. So I think one thing which I've observed during, as soon as by the month of May or June, as soon as the kind of lockdown started coming out of it, is the tremendous spirit of bouncing back that we have seen in the society. I remember going to the operating committee meeting, and the marketing head would report out that today 83-85% of the dealerships and the service centers and all have opened up, and next week he'll say 95%. So the speed at which things bounce back, you know, the services, customers are coming back with servicing of the cars and all, because the cars have been standing for so many months, batteries and things like that draining off and all that. So the spirit of bouncing back, I have really observed that. Of course, it was again, it had to go down because there were kind of a few cities were again put on lockdown. We have seen quite a bit of uptake of orders, and I'm definitely not only talking of India, because the whole Asia Pacific and the Middle East and Africa was under my domain. We have seen, for example, vehicles like Ranger is doing exceptionally well, and we have to spend quite a lot of millions of dollars worth of air freights to bring parts, because that was the only way you could manage the supply chain, of course, with a positive business case. So we have seen the uptake, but of course I do echo what Kalpesh is saying, that so far so good in terms of coming back. But how does the future in the Q1 or Q2 of 2021, how does that look like? That is definitely a concern, or we are basically, it's still we are studying that. Cash is the king. Of course, there are no travels, so that way we are definitely, you know, force of recruitments, cash is spendings is down, absolutely down to as minimal as possible. No more projects where capex is involved. So all such things have been taken care of. Inventory, quite a lot of focus on inventory, and premium freights or air freights and things like that are being studied very carefully. So I think there is a lot of cautious optimism, but the way the market has bounced back, we are very keen to see that how we can also. So I feel this is the time that the Indian industry, particularly in the field of logistics and supply chain, should look into how to strengthen our back end, how to strengthen through the digitization. For example, I had the opportunity to talk in few other sessions in automotive logistics yesterday. I was saying that how we don't know who are our tier 1 to tier X. We at the most know T1 and T2, but beyond that T3 to the TX, we have absolutely no idea. So when a pandemic like this happens, we simply don't know what we don't know. And now there is a realization. So now we are using digitization. We're trying to map the entire T1 to TX of the entire Ford Motor Company together, so that at least tomorrow, if we get into a situation like this, we know exactly which is the supply chain end to end we will be affected. We are also taking a very serious look into centralization of the whole supply chain, because we are a global multinational. So we are looking into how we can have one supply chain team using one transport management system, handling the total Ford Motor Company supply chain, say sitting over, say, in Chennai, a low-cost country, or for that matter, any other. So those kind of and big ticket items are coming back into the discussion, and we are making some very quick, fast stride on that. So yes, the pandemic, to agree with what Kalpesh said, pandemic has really taught us a lot. We are launching quite a lot of projects in terms of which were IT projects, launching of ERPs or launching of go live of projects, tools and systems without traveling there. So remotely we're launching, which we have never thought we could have done that. So yes, it has taught us a lot, but we really need to pick up pace and can't give up now at this juncture.
No, absolutely, and it's fantastic to see the projects that you've been working on and the transformation that's that you've been focused on for the international markets group there at Ford. I think that's so. I know we had many discussions about that, and you presented on some topics around that subject as well, right? So it was fascinating to see. Just in terms of the other players in the Chennai area, have you been kind of communicating with some of your other colleagues there during this time, and how are they kind of faring? Of course, you have Nissan and Hyundai, Kia there that have big facilities there as well, right? And of course, you had you've had kind of like double or multiple lockdowns there as well, right?
That's right. Yeah, Chennai particularly. Now I think Kalpesh is right, Pune as well. But yeah, Chennai particularly had a tougher time as against rest of India. I think Mumbai, Chennai, Delhi were the three main difficult cities. Yes, pretty much everyone have similar issues. Hyundai, Daimler, and then Peugeot has recently come in. So we are having similar issues. But I think the rebound has been equally positive for all, is what I've been hearing. Of course, in the last kind of 30, 40, 45 days, I'm a little out of touch with my peers in those organizations. But it has hit us in the same way. I know pretty much all of us were shut down. Hyundai was shut down for longer durations. And then later on, when it opened, then they really picked up speed. They really organized to have people across staying in and around the plant and started running the plant in a very aggressive manner, which was again something to watch and learn from how they kind of manage the recovery aspect or revamping aspect of it. But supply chain is a common problem for all, because particularly in Ford Motor Company, we have philosophy across Ford Motor Company globally. We have only 4 hours of inventory inside the plant. That's it, only 4 hours. So if the next truck, which is supposed to come now, doesn't come in 4 hours sharp, our plants anywhere in the world will stop. So with that kind of a very, very lean and agile supply chain, I think it was a little bit more tougher for us. But then you learn through these days and all. And as I said, that the resilience that we are talking about a lot these days, the resilience is not that in future when there is a pandemic, we will not lose production or will not shut down plant. That is not what resilience is. Resilience is how can I build up a whole digitized view of my entire supply chain so that I now know what I know, and I also know what I don't know. So I will have the entire data and the visibility in front of me and in front of the leadership all together so that we can take the right call. For example, going forward, digitization will tell me if there is, unfortunately, God forbid, another pandemic somewhere, say in Spain, for example, then if I cut off all the Spanish supplier and the Spanish ports and the Spanish airports and all the route from Spain in and out and all that, my database should be able to tell me that, okay, so that means you can't produce those vehicle lines, but you can produce those other vehicle lines. You cannot switch on such plants, such and such plants, but you can keep your other plants running. The data should be able to reveal it. Today, in this pandemic, we had to struggle with Excel sheets to find out, okay, what can I do then? Which model I can run? So we realized that how much lack of data we had, even though we are 100-plus-year-old company. Making cars. So going digitized is the way forward. And I think that's where, if anything, COVID has proven us or given us is basically it has hastened the whole journey towards digitization. And hence in future pandemic, we will be much more better resilient in order to face it and not perhaps as helpless as we were in this time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you, Amlan. Always great to hear the things that you're working on, and yeah, it's incredible, right? Companies that have been in existence and producing products for many hundreds of years, are still adapting and finding new ways in which to continue to survive. And I think this situation has also accelerated some of that change as well. I think I'd like to bring the panel together a little bit and talk about some of those aspects of demand planning, and how we kind of look at that demand planning side of things and plan for that, because of course you've got a busy period coming up with of course the festive season there in India. Diwali is a big time for sales in the automotive industry, and what are the kind of predictions for sales around that kind of period, and how do you plan and your demand around that, right? I think from a construction equipment perspective, Gunjan, you have some tools that you're using to plan your demand. Maybe we could start with you, and you give us some perspectives on how you're kind of managing to plan that demand at the moment.
Sure, Neemish, thank you. And I'll start from where Amlan talked about increasing the digitization and the use of it in doing our business. So necessity actually is the mother of all inventions, and definitely COVID has pushed us as professionals to look at business differently and work differently on that particular aspect. Digital platforms have really helped us in keeping the teams together, making sure that we are interactive on many ways, and we get connected at the time of crisis. However, it is also a very important tool for us in JCB to really track the performance of our machines in the field very clearly. The basic idea of putting up these digitization through the telematics was to really monitor the performance of our machines for the customers, to make sure that the machines are up and running, because these machines are being used for earning their livelihood. So that was the basis, why the entire platform was laid down. The important aspect, which was utilized during this particular lockdown, is to really monitor how those machines are being utilized, have given us a very strong indication of which areas in India are bouncing back soon. The machine utilization metric itself has given us a very strong indication that the growth is not going to be linear in nature. It's going to be a V-shaped growth which is coming up. And therefore, that was the first trigger that we gave in the supply chain teams to really jig up the schedules once again, depending upon the nature and the region in which those trends were identified, monitored, and talked through the customers. The sales teams, were asked to give attention to those areas where we have seen that the utilization of the machine has gone up. And that has really, in turn, given a push to the sales, and that in turn has given a trigger to the supply chain to really start the entire MSME framework, if I may use that word, to come back to the action as quickly as possible. So to stay nimble is important. The answer is yes. And this digital platform on our machines has really helped us this particular lockdown to plan the growth much more effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, that's great. And it's fascinating to see that you have that kind of depth of vision, right? We always talk about visibility, and that visibility on the demand side of things must be a joy to you, right? To be able to see that, and to then you could to be able to adjust your supply chain accordingly. That's fantastic. Maybe I'll ask Puneet to kind of give us his thoughts on what the festive season might look like in terms of sales and demand.
Yeah, Neemish. So I think if you talk about short term, I think Gunjan also talked about it. So I think definitely, we are seeing the markets picking up. So next 2-3 months are really going to be, something we may not have even seen this year. This is how we are seeing projections of players like Maruti Suzuki or Hyundai. But I think the worry is, I think if you see, I think Gunjan touched on it, that last year, same time, was very, very high. It was primarily because there was heavy discounting, and Primarily, it was more of a shift from BS4 to BS6. So companies like Maruti Suzuki, try to give up the maximum discount, or even other big corporates. So obviously, matching that kind of volume is not possible. So obviously, we are going to see degrowth. But nevertheless, if we are talking about, a number above July or August, so I think we are going to grow in next month. But I think the bigger question would be, so like, are these really sustainable? Because I think still there are a lot of knowns which are unknowns. I think Amlan talked about it. Because we don't know about resurgence, right? We don't know about second phase. And typically, I have been reading that in the top 1,000 districts of India, and typically, there has been a rise of COVID cases of more than 20% in rural markets. Now, in case if that happens, then obviously we are going into a deeper concern, because, and typically from supply chain perspective, because obviously the produce will get impacted, the transportation will get impacted, and so I think the challenges may be relatively more. And one thing in the last, I would like to say is that this pandemic, is very different from what we have seen. So generally, either there is financial crisis which lead to economic crisis, or economic crisis which leads to financial crisis. But this was more of a human crisis which led to economic crisis and then to financial crisis, right? Until the time, government really doesn't give that kind of confidence. So obviously it's not about government, right? So it's about like the entire ecosystem give confidence to the consumer, that yes, there are vaccinations and the vaccinations are safe, so which is not easy, so I think it's going to take time. And maybe from supply chain perspective, I think this is a time, generally again in crisis, we have seen that there are a lot of labor, but there is no capital. But in this pandemic, it's actually opposite, so there is a lot of capital out there, but there is no labor. There is a big fear psychosis among, the people who have migrated to rural areas. So obviously, I think, and I think supply chain, if you talk about supply chain, it's more about more hands, right, which is really transporting the goods. So maybe at these levels, 70-80% levels, it's fine. But I think when we really move toward 100% or even go beyond that, so then obviously we need those hands. So I think the bigger concern can be migration of people. But obviously, once we have more vaccinations out, people have more confidence, or the government is able, or maybe we see other countries moving ahead, I think things will be on par. But obviously, I think if you talk about IHS market numbers, so what we have seen in 2018, we will be seeing that in now 2023. And this is how we see most of the OEMs are planning for, typically in cars, passenger vehicle segment.
Sure. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Let's also look at some of the opportunities, right? I think we've talked about short-term demand. Where are the kind of the main opportunities in terms of redesigning that supply chain for India, right? I think is there a more of a desire to kind of localize supply? Where do you see those kind of opportunities? Let's maybe start with some ideas from Kalpesh and from that side of things.
So let me just start with the previous question on demand forecasting, and let me tell you, like, so far in my majority time of the career, I was thinking that sales guys always goof up, they plan wrong, correct? And because of that, I'm into this situation as a supply chain person. And I think I have realized, and I one thing which I have learned is it's very difficult to predict the sales. And we all know that, like, we have a long pipeline. Even if we have heavily localized the products, Neemish, I think we have a lot of components which are at tier 3, tier 4 flowing down with a longer lead time. So first and fundamental change which I would propose from my side to the industry is that, see, we are monitoring the industry and growth or degrowth based on the wholesale numbers. I think it's a high time that we move over to the retail monitoring of the industry, whether it's growing or degrowing. Because of the wholesale strategy, we have added a lot of buffers and additional costs by carrying the stock of finished goods at various stages, and that's unnecessary waste in the whole system, correct? So that's first. Second is, like, companies and the strategies which we need to think is how can we shorten our supply chain, because demand is unpredictable. At the same time, customer is always important. Based on the new dynamics, I think customer demands are also changing very fast. So how dynamically we can align our supply chain, and the companies who are able to align their supply chains as dynamically as possible so that they can respond to the changes whichever way they are coming up. So I think I foresee from a macro and strategic aspects, I think we need to change our mindset. Number one, that sales is difficult to predict, so unnecessarily we should not blame the sales guys. We in supply chain, we need to really start working hard and put up our business model in such a way that how quickly I can reduce my pipeline or the lead time, so that if there are any changes or fluctuations in my value chain, I can quickly adjust and fulfill the market demand. So I think I would say we are in the phase of rethinking, redefining, and resetting our timelines. 3 hours, which I always coin in front of my team: rethink, redefine, and reset. So it's high time we reset and think over how we can reduce the lead time, which will help us to better cater to our customers.
Yeah, fantastic. Amlan, what are your thoughts on that? Of course, we've talked a lot about that supply chain view. Who would have thought salespeople would be so difficult to manage, right? And
Well, I'm disappointed with Kalpesh. We agreed that we will never appreciate the sales guys, but I don't know, looks like the sales guys have taken him for a cup of coffee that he so easily gave up our secret. But anyway, we have thought about it during this crisis when the Wuhan was shut down, and because of Wuhan, the whole China was shut down. We used to talk to each other and say, can you imagine, could you have imagined a day when the entire China is shut off? And then within a month, the whole world was shut down. So I think it has been a huge humanitarian wake-up call for all of us. So we have discussed this, and you know what, Neemish, you really cannot undo your whole supplier base. It is just not possible. Someone was saying, hey, so do you think the supply base would be moved out of China? Well, guess what? What if the next pandemic, God forbid, comes from Spain? Then where are you going to move your supply base? So it is just not possible. Maybe what can be done, some surgical studies can be done in terms of very, very critical commodities, which is common across all my vehicle lines, all my vehicle models and all. Those few commodities, we can see whether we should have a single source, double source, or multiple sourced and all. So, someone was talking about it is not offshoring or onshoring, but it is multi-shoring. So, that multi-shoring you can do only for critical commodities. So I think we have to live with the fact that a pandemic like this is possible, and history shows us that it happens every 100 years. So, tsunami is something which you have always read in the book, but as this generation, we have seen a tsunami. Pandemic, we used to hear from the Spanish flu, but in this generation, we have now seen another Spanish flu of a sort. So I think the answer is take this time to introspect and go digitized. The advantage of digitization is that you are trying to make your systems and processes more human touchless. So if you can run your supply chain without human intervention, then it helps you from staying away from putting more and more human beings to the crisis and let the data do the job. As I was quoting yesterday, my ex-CEO in Ford Motor Company, Alan, used to say that the data would set us free. The data would make us transparent. It takes away the burden from you. So when the data and the tool runs your forecasting based on the single source of truth, which it is seeing, which is getting emotionless, sentimentless, I think that is as ideal as we can get to the truth. And an organization at the end of the day, enterprise, a global enterprise of the level of, say, Ford, is nothing but an extension of your house. So you house your family members and all. Suppose there is a crisis, the first thing you would like to know, Neemish, is that do you have all the necessary things in your house? Yeah, you have vegetables, you have fruits, you have electricity, power, this, that, and all that. Now, the moment you know, as the head of the family, you have a confidence. And in that know, if you come to know that I don't have such and such thing, then also you feel confident that at least I know what I don't have, now I can do something about it. So this pandemic has taught us that please get to know what your house situation is. No matter good or bad, that is not the point. You get to know yourself first. And that knowing is all about push towards digitization. And digitization will always democratize the whole thing. The moment you democratize, that means you centralize. You now need 10 different supply chain to run Ford Motor Company. One supply chain centrally located. It can be even in Ultima too, because everything is connected through cloud computing and cloud TMS and cloud ERPs and all that. So your structural cost also comes down. And then there is a single source of truth because there is a single leadership which is guiding it. So this needs cultural change, behavioral change, organizational, paradigm shift. But this is the moment when you take those calls, because next pandemic will be perhaps much more brutal if you don't learn from it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we're almost out of time. It's been a fantastic discussion there. Of course, I've had the opportunity to of course come and visit you all there in India, and of course we have certainly missed that time that we haven't been able to come there. But we of course very much wish you all well there, and hope you continue to remain safe, and of course look forward to seeing India prosper again as it continues to do so. It's a fantastic market and country and people there, and I certainly miss not being able to come and share a cup of tea with you all. But certainly, if there's any kind of, there's lots of opportunities there. Electric vehicles, the festive season is coming up, so let's all take that opportunity to enjoy that time as well. So with that, I'll say namaste. Good to see you all again, and thank you all for joining this session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nimesh.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.